Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma, and welcome to this marathon telecast. We bring you the tabulation on the road to a modern India, and we are calling it the Bharat Progress Report, presented by the NewsX editorial team. This is a marathon telecast with 101 milestones, and in the next half an hour, we speak about the top 10 milestones that have brought about progress in the country, that also are the parameters for the economy of our country that has grown leaps and bounds. Let's take a look at the first point, the first milestone in the category of economy. India's GDP grew by 7%, the world's fastest growing major economy. Joining me on the telecast is my editor-in-chief, Rishabh Gulati. Rishabh, a massive milestone. This goes on to show that India is at its pinnacle when it comes to the growth of the economy.
This is a complex barometer, because if you look at the Government of India indices, and if you just Googled it, India's GDP, you'll get a lot of figures, okay? The World Bank figure is different, Wikipedia will give you a different figure, the IMF will give you a different figure, Government of India will have a projected figure, then a real figure which will be revised upwards, downwards, so it's very complex. So we try to simplify it, okay? The bottom line is that through the course, across the financial years, because we are looking at a calendar year, January to December, so across the financial year, which is January, February, March, that ends in the financial year, of course, of March, then we go into the financial year 24-25. This is the estimate, 7% is what India's GDP grew. That makes India the world's fastest growing major economy in the calendar year of 2024.
You're absolutely right. Let's take a look at the second milestone when it comes to parameters that have led to the growth of our economy. India's forex reserves hit an all-time high of $704 billion in September 2024. Now that's quite an achievement, that we have grown from 1947. Of course, we saw a massive dip in 1991, liberalization, and that led after that to the achievement that we have brought forth.
Okay, foreign exchange reserves, fundamentally important for the health of an economy. This is how much we can afford in case there is a crisis, and crises do happen. I am a generation, Megha, you and me, where we remember when we had a foreign exchange crisis in 1991, when we simply could not afford to buy petroleum, we couldn't afford to buy anything. We were down to 3 weeks of forex reserves. $704 billion is an all-time peak high. It fluctuates every month, okay, as various things that the RBI is doing and import and export bills come in. But we have peaked. Record forex reserves have been scored in 2024.
Absolutely. I also have with me Jayajit Bhattacharya. Thank you for joining me. And these 2 points, the GDP of the country at 7%, fastest growing major economy, and the very important point, forex reserves at a record high. What do these indicate?
You know, another thing that you would like to add is that all of this has been done in the backdrop of significant geopolitical unrest, which is kind of unprecedented in the last 40-50 years. So in that background, we were able to achieve what you just mentioned. What does this really indicate is the fact that it's not a 1 year off. You know, 2 years ago, we became the 5th largest economy in the world. This year in December, as we speak, we are definitely the 4th largest economy in the world. You will find the formal figures out by March of next year. So every 2 years, we are going up by 1 rank. And clearly by 2027, we'll become the 3rd largest economy in the world. So it is on fundamental basics that we are growing. It's not one-off. For example, there was a bordering country which where the electricity generation went live, and therefore the growth was 11 to 12% in that 1 year on a small basis. But that's not the case for India. Right. Not only that, one of the most heartening points about this growth we had in especially 2024-25 is the fact that manufacturing has started contributing in a significant manner to the growth.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Jayajit, I'm going to come back to you. Let's take a look at point number 3, milestone number 3. India's per capita availability of fruits and vegetables hit a record high of 227 kilograms. Rishabh, what does this indicate?
Okay, so one is per capita production, and then the other is per capita availability. So when it comes to sabzi, okay, vegetables and fruits, for every man, woman and child in this country, we are now producing 227 kilograms. So a quarter of a ton of fruits and vegetables are being produced. And this is a major milestone, because as we do the course of the next several hours of these conversations, you will hear that we are hitting records in 2024 across the board. This is a major one when it comes to simple thing as sustainability, feeding yourself.
Okay, point number 4, milestone number 4, it's banks in India saw the non-performing assets falling to 2.7% in 2024 from 11.1% in 2018.
Major issue, Megha, you remember NewsX used to run a campaign on NPAs 7-8 years ago because this is the bad debts of banks. The non-performing assets have come down from 11.1% just 6 years ago to less than 2.7%. So this is all the restructuring that the government is doing to make sure our banking industry is healthy and stable. Because remember, the last 2 big financial crises have happened because of the instability of the banking industry globally. This is good news for India.
Jaijit, what do you have to say? Particularly availability of fruits and vegetables per person in our country, a record high, NPAs that have fallen. How does this impact the finance sector?
See, on the first part, one of the dipstick checks I would like to do is just check the state of the street dogs from the time in 1991 till now. They become bigger, better, and so on and so forth, which just means that a lot of calories is moving through the system down to the street dogs. So, if you ignore all the statistics from the economist, just the visual accounts show that we are doing better in terms of calorific intake. And clearly, the statistics of fruit and vegetable that you're mentioning just shows that we have come a long way. We are no more a nation which is malnourished. We may not be appropriately nourished, which is a different issue, but we are not malnourished in that sense, which also means that we'll have a better labor force as we move forward. In terms of the NPAs, it is not just that NPAs has come down, also we have cleaned up the old NPAs. And therefore, we are on a much more robust fundamental basis for the rest of the economy and the banking system to grow, which enables us to have a positive outlook for the next 5 to 6 years, as long as we don't pile up any more NPAs.
Okay, let's take a look at point number 5, milestone number 5. Now, this was a massive achievement for India because India's all-time FDI inflows crossed $1 trillion US.
Megha, we used to calculate FDI. So there are 2 kinds of investments that come in, foreign investments that come to India. One is called FII, which is foreign institutional investment. This is what's going into your stock markets and financial instruments and your companies. And the monies that companies raise from capital markets and investors abroad. The problem with FIIs is that a percentage of them can literally be sold overnight and moved out of the country depending on how the winds are flowing economically. Foreign direct investment is a lot different. That is in power projects, in road projects, in port projects, in major infrastructure building where the investment payoff period may be 10 years, it might be 20 years, it might be 25 years. So foreign direct investment can't pack up and leave. It is invested into the growth and development of India to pay a dividend to the investees over a period of time. Now, 2-3 decades ago, getting $10-15 billion a year of FDI was a marked achievement. That became 30-40 billion. So we are looking at a figure of all-time FDI, which means over the course of our economic history in the last 20-30 years, we have now received more than $1 trillion of people from all over the world investing in capital asset formation in this country. So now you look at the overall figure, 7% GDP growth, fastest growing economy in the world. Okay, Jaijit was just mentioning we've already become the number 5th economy, which means we overtook the UK. Most likely we are already, if not or will shortly, become the 4th largest, overtaking Germany, which means in terms of sheer economic size, only Japan, China and the United States of America are left. If you put in the figures of the forex reserves which I just mentioned, so forex reserve at about $700 billion, they go up and down, so they're a bit below that, but we peaked 2 months ago at $700 billion. That covers 11 months, so almost 1 year of import bills for this country. So let's assume that India did not have a single dollar of any exports, they just stopped tomorrow for some reason. You would still have enough money in your bank, in the RBI, to cover your import bill for the next 1 year. And more importantly, that covers 96% of external debt. So for every penny that India owes for monies we have borrowed from abroad, we have that money in the bank. It's almost one on a one-on-one basis. Then of course you have FDI coming in, which is also contributes to your forex, contributes to your GDP growth, and it puts you in a picture of where we are headed.
Okay, from FDI pouring into the country, we also take a look at India's exports that also reached a record of 778 billion US dollars. How does this impact the economy?
In order to have a functioning, successful economy, you have to be able to be making revenue. Okay, it's as simple as you and me at home. We have to be earning more than we are spending. The government of India, which is the Union of India, the Exchequer of India, the country of India, its people, and the GDP of India also need to make a revenue. So now revenue can be made from sheer economic activity. That's what a GDP is. What's the economic activity happening in the country? How many people are digging a hole and pulling out coal, and how much of the coal is going to a power plant, which is producing electricity, which is then furnishing your steel mills, which are then producing the steel which you're using in a house. This is the GDP of a country. Okay, soft services like what we do in the media, soft services. This is the GDP of the country. All our products and services form the GDP of the country. But a important source of earnings for forex management is exports, and we have reached a record export of $778 billion in 2024. We have a long way to go. So our deficit still exists. Large amount of the deficit, remember, is to China. We make a export import profit when it comes to trading with the US. We make a huge export import loss when it comes to trading with China. But overall, $778 billion of various kinds of exports, from the smallest thing, which is literally things like agricultural products, to the biggest high-tech items, including now defense.
Okay, Jaijit, you tell me, when it comes to India's exports, so which are these manufacturing, which are these manufacturing and services that are being provided, that are sent across, and also which are these FDIs that are coming into our country?
You know, half and half. It's about $400 billion is merchandise exports, about $400 billion is services, which is a very sweet spot because of the fact that services has a huge margin. And do keep in mind that there's almost 1/4 of the Indian economy. So 1/4 of the Indian economy is based on exports, and that's a very good piece to have for now. Now, in which sectors are we getting the investments in? In fact, you know, since you mentioned what does the services contribute, a lot of it is, besides the traditional IT sector, is also the GCCs, which is the global capability centers, where companies are actually relocating their backend entirely to India, and that's becoming part of the exports. And that's where also a significant amount of investments are coming in. Also, you'd have seen in the meantime the large IPO that Hyundai brought in, which was basically money to be used in the manufacturing sector, setting up more capacity within the country, and a lot of it will be used for further exports. We have now become a significant player in automobiles export, which was quite unthinkable about 10 years back. So it's a very broad-based growth that's happening. If you look at manufacturing, traditionally it was engineering that we were focusing on. Now we see a lot of chemicals being exported. Our chemical industry is growing quite significantly. So if you look at it, both manufacturing and services is not tied to any single sector. For example, as the diamond polishing and cutting industry went down this year because of many factors, our overall exports grew because we are broad-based. We are dependent on not just one industry. We are not a single industry player. We are spread over multiple industries, and that gives a lot of faith into India, which starts playing a virtuous cycle because more investment starts coming in because we are broad-based, and because we are broad-based, it leads to further growth and therefore further investments.
Right.
So we are
absolutely.
Really sweet spot.
Absolutely. Let's now take a look at milestone number 7, and here it is. India's unemployment rate fell to a 3.2%. Now that's a very important figure for the country.
Difficult figure, highly contentious figure, but that's the official figure, which is now at a pretty much near record low. The reason it's a difficult figure and a contentious figure is because a large percentage, some would say 40 to 50%, maybe more, are still irregular workforce. Irregular workforce means it's not working on a salary, whose records in a company are then registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, so it's easy to track. So This is why the unemployment rate in India is so complex, because we have an irregular workforce that is so large. So you have to look at various other measures of employment generation, but officially of people who had salaried jobs, who were working in companies, and the judgment of how many people who worked with or have the potential to work with companies in the past are now currently looking for a job, that's at a declining rate. So at least it's a positive metric when it comes to unemployment, even if this is not the last word on employment and unemployment in the country.
Okay, now we have generated employment. Next up is, of course, we talk about pension funds, we talk about provident funds, and the Employee Provident Fund Organization Investment Corpus hit a record to 24.7 trillion rupees.
Okay, so now this EPFOs, okay, which means that all people who are salaried and get salaries, okay, have a provident fund. It's an I wouldn't say antiquated, but it's a legacy system that has stayed with us. A lot of new corporates are adopting new systems, but this is to provide for pensions for people who are salaried employees in this country. Now, the EPFOs have a corpus, and they provide the pension by investing that corpus. And you put all the EPFOs together, which means all the employee pension funds together, the corpus is now at a record high of 24.7 trillion rupees. Okay, this is how much they have, which they can deploy in market assets, in bonds and other investment classes, which means that the number of people working and contributing to the EPFOs is at record highs. The amount that they are contributing, which means not only the number of sheer numbers of people contributing, but this is also a reflection of how much their earning capacity is, because your EPFO part is generally a percentage of what your annual salary is.
Okay, Jaijit, talking about unemployment rate that has fallen, talking about the EPFOs, how does this impact our economy?
I think the key operating word is what Rishabh mentioned, which is the salaried people. Obviously, what has also happened in this economy is that a lot of self-employment has happened, which makes the economy much more robust. It's not dependent on jobs in that sense. And therefore, you will see that wherever the formal jobs are lower, the uptake of mudra loans and Laghu Mudra loans have significantly gone up. And therefore, that just demonstrates the resilience of our employment and of our job market in that sense. So it seems to be on a very positive track from an employment perspective. Now, the mirror image of that, again, as Rishabh mentioned, EPFO is the mirror image of who all are getting salaries. Clearly, a $29 trillion, which is roughly about 29 trillion rupees, which is about $300 billion, roughly about 8 to 9% of the GDP, is now available for further investments, for funding the retirement of this set of people who are working hard towards building up this pile of money, which can then also be repurposed for building more infrastructure, which can lead to more jobs. So we are clearly, again, back to that virtuous cycle that I mentioned a little while earlier, with unemployment and EPFO being strongly linked, and the money coming out is getting reinvested into infrastructure, which is, again, being created at a rapid pace as we speak.
Okay, now, milestone number 9, we've seen a record 7.29 crore income tax returns that were filed, and this is because of the contribution, because there has been the government effort to enhance compliance. How's that happened?
Okay, so this is a really good sign. So I wanted to do the mathematics. Okay, there are 150 crore Indians, okay, of which you have to deduct about 40-50 crores who are not going to be of an age where they are earning an income. So you are looking at 100 crore, a billion people in this country. Just a few years ago, less than 1% of the country filed income tax returns. Just 1% of the country filed income tax returns. So on the gross figure, that's up to 4%. So it's gone up 4 times. In the actual figure, if you remove children under the age of 18, it's nearer the 7% mark. Now, this is showing that more people are filing income tax returns because the ease of the taxation system, the digital filing has become lots of components on this. So it's easier to file the income tax returns. Your tax rebates are coming faster. Your taxation formulas, brackets have gone up, which means that the effective taxation rate for the salaried class, which is what files income tax returns primarily in terms of individual returns, they are more in tune with filing returns, despite the fact that all agricultural income in this country is non-taxable, and therefore a lot of the agriculturalists in this country, which still employs 30-40% of the country, will not be filing returns. A lot of the irregular economy people not filing returns. But good to see that this figure is on an uptick, which means that the direct tax burden to India's exchequer is being borne by a larger number of people, which is a fairer and better system for all the people who are actually honestly paying tax, generally those who are in the middle class.
Okay, let's take a look at milestone number 10, which is the highest ever gross GST collection in April 2024 at 2.10 lakh crore rupees. This is also a reflection of how streamlining of a taxation system has benefited the government.
Okay, so if all goes well, okay, for the next several years, every month should be GST record, okay, if all goes well. So you've seen month on month records being set because the GST system is working better. It is better for the country in principle. It is better for the country in theory. It is becoming better for the country in practice. There are lots of problems with the GST system which are being ironed out. Some still remain. You've just seen, this popcorn war which has been going on. So we have a long way to go, but at least we are heading in the right direction. So obviously in March, April, that financial quarter time is when you're going to see the maximum amount of GST filings, because people who have arrears, I will be clearing out that point of time. So yes, every March, April, you should see a maximum amount of GST filings, but we've hit a record. So the government of India, the exchequer of India, earned 2.1 lakh crore rupees in a single month in April in 2024, the highest ever.
Okay, on that note, I come to the end of the first episode of the Bharat Progress Report. We are focusing on economy and the 10 milestones that become the parameters of a robust economy. In the next half an hour, after this very short break, we are talking about industry and those 10 milestones that bring about the parameters for a robust industry in our country. So stay tuned. In just a short while, we take a look at industry, the Bharat Progress Report.